Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and a very good evening. My name is Faisal, Kassim, and welcome to Live Real Talk. Tonight, many people this week were given reasons to celebrate, and tonight that is the conversation that we're going to have this evening right here on the set with amazing brains. After 12 years, the Kenya-Somalia border, in particular 3 locations, that is Liboni, that is in Mandera, Bulahawa in Mandera as well, and Ras Kamboni in Lamu County, will be opened within a phased process that will take at least 90 days. This is something that has been received with both sides of the divide. Some of them celebrating and thinking that this is the best thing that the UDA and Kenya Court Administration has ever done, yet others took it with a pinch of salt. Before we go or delve into the topic, let's listen to Interior CS Professor Kithure Kindiki, what he had to say on the matter.
Able to agree to review the arrangements in place to make it easier for our people to move a bit more freely by relooking at the visa procedures to make sure as much as possible we restore free movement of people and make it easy for people to integrate freely. We also are looking at the possibility of opening the border, and we have resolved that the border between Kenya and Somalia will be reopened in a phased out manner within the next 90 days, effective today, starting with the Mandera-Bulahawa border point, which should be open in the next 30 days. Within another 30 days, meaning 60 days from now, we should be able to open the second border point, which is Liboi Arhar Doble on the Somalia side, and also 90 days from today, we also hope to be able to open a third border point, which is Kiunga Ras Kamboni in Lamu County. The first border point provides an entry point from the Kenyan side in Mandera County. The second border point provides an entry point from the Kenyan side in Garissa County. And the last border point will be able to provide an entry point from the Kenyan side in Lamu County.
Thank you so much, Aban Shehemi. Those were remarks made after meeting with his Somalia counterpart, Ahmed Sheikh Mohammed, when they were talking about the border issue. Joining me tonight in studio, I have an economist by profession, best among us in the studio, that is none other than Ruth Kinyanjui. Karibu sana, and thanks much for making time for us this evening.
Thank you.
Dr. Mustafa Yusuf Ali, a senior seasoned journalist, a researcher, director and founder of the Horn Institute, Building Resilience Against Violence Extremism, Brave, again also a founder and a director. Karibu sana, Daktari.
Thank you, Faisal.
Been a minute since we had you on this set.
Yeah, it's been years actually, isn't it?
The set, the cameras, they all missed you.
Maybe you thought I went to Shakahola or something.
Amazing sound, voice of authority on matters diplomacy and security, not just in this country, but the nation, but the continent at large. Dr. We are honored, we are privileged to have you once again in the studio.
Thank you, Faisal.
Thank you so much for making time for us this evening. Guys, Kenya-Somalia border, as you've had the CS speaking, starting with Mandera Bulahawa, then Liboi in Mandera still, and then later Ras Kamboni in a first period of 90 days. First, let's just start get the feeling. Rose, let's start with you. How do you feel about, how do you receive the news?
I look at it in different views or different ways. First, I look at the development in the north of Kenya, which has been neglected for a very long time. I think if there's one thing that is ringing in my head is the fact that research has always been done, and we've been told that the North has the best soil for agriculture. When it comes to food security, is that something that is going to be considered to be a consideration? Secondly, the fact that the things that have been bringing a lot of volatility in the borders will, if those issues are addressed, then can Kenyan properly and freely be able to go to those places and invest the same way that other places, especially for the last maybe 11 years, that hasn't happened. Can investment be able to spread to those areas? The third thing also is when it comes to other issues, especially socioeconomic, including education. How is that going to happen? And I'm believing that with now the two governments talking, the issues that were bringing issues to do with terrorism, border dangers, are going to be addressed. The third thing is the economy and the synergies that are going to come with the cross-border trade. I think there's a lot of things that Kenya can be able to export to Somalia. So will now business be able to freely flow, and will it be good businesses that? And how are the two governments working to ensure that the flow of goods and services, including the infrastructure that is going to spread to those areas, that is including Lamu, Wajir, Mandera, and the whole of that north part. So I look at it, there are a lot of synergy, and especially, and they have also to, the fifth thing is that they also have to convince the common mwananchi that the issues that have been there have been cleared, and that has to be demonstrated properly so that the common mwananchi can feel safe, and also to be able to see that the two governments also are supporting each other even at the border, ensuring that both the, I know previously we've had issues with the Somali, people feeling like they're not supporting our army when they are in there and things like that. So if the diplomacy issue, which Dr. will talk about, can be able to be sorted, then there are a lot of economies of scale that can be able to be leveraged from both countries. But Kenya has to feel like it's going to get benefits from all that, because they feel like a lot of people right now feel like most of Somalis are going to come.
So economically, it's a good deal.
It's a good deal.
Very
it's
good
a good deal. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Doc, what do you think? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, first of all, just the notion that Somalis need to get visas to come to Kenya should not be there in the first place. You know, I think the first thing actually that needs to be done is to waive
the visa.
And then
free flow
of people. And then the second is, of course, the border points. They should have been opened long time ago. I understand the security reasons that led to the closure of these borders. When Al-Shabaab and other groups were very much using or crossing over, using, you know, in all manner of ways and attacking Kenya. But even when the border points were closed, you know, the attacks did not stop. There are many, the border is so porous. The communities living along the borders are the same. In fact, if you go to some towns, the roofs of one of the house in Kenya is touching the roof.
No.
That is what it is in some places. And so it became very difficult. And even when the borders were closed, you know, there was still a lot of movement back and forth. And now that this has been waived, or rather the borders are being opened, it means that there'll be more orderly movement of people. And why would I, if I am not a criminal, why would I want to get into Kenya and take my goods into Kenya or Kenya into Somalia if there is an orderly way of doing it, a legal way of doing it? So it's going to enhance not just now the economic issues that Madam has said, but security. So there will be better monitoring. And those people that will now be using the Panya routes, the porous borders, you know, automatically those will be considered as criminals, because why they should be asked, why don't you use the borders that have been opened? So it makes a lot of security sense to actually open these borders.
And I just want us to unpack the whole security topic that you brought about, you brought forth. So one, then does it mean the threat does no longer exist, having in mind that we still have our soldiers in Somaliland, in the land of Somalia, basically?
No, the terrorist threats continue to exist. In fact, it's very, at this point in time, it has gone high, the threats, because Al-Shabaab is being pushed. The territory that they used to control physically is being taken from them.
Yeah.
So they definitely are, in the same way when Daesh was being pushed in Syria and Iraq, where did they go? We now hear them here in Mozambique, in DR Congo. They are doing crazy stuff in there. So we should expect that actually Al-Shabaab terrorists will move into Kenya. But now opening the borders means that you're able to control the movement, so that those that are using the porous routes that are not official, automatically those become criminals.
Doc, please help a layman understand here. So when the borders were officially closed, then you still termed them to be porous, and that's why we had those attacks even the last 11 years. They did not stop. Right now, they're going to be opened.
Mm-hmm. Let me tell you something, Faisal. When you're saying we're opening the borders, it's I think the Minister for Interior talked about the 3 border points, isn't it?
Yeah.
So those are the official ones with immigration, police, and those are the ones that are being opened. Large swaths, the 700 plus miles of border between Kenya and Somalia. You know, if you go there today, you just walk across. If you don't go to now the official borders, you just walk across, and those in Somalia walk into Kenya. There is nothing. You just walk across and come back. So there are no borders. There's no wall, or there's just an imaginary line that is there that, you know, this is an international border.
This separates us from you guys.
That's true. That's true. So, you know, there's very little that a one can do. The only thing is to open these borders and then control, regulate the flow of people, goods, and what comes in and what goes into Somalia. It's one of the most porous borders in the world.
Wow. You're speaking about goods regulation, and I want to bring in Rose now here, because you've spoken about the opportunities that comes with it, especially on matters economy. I mean, we've all clearly seen what Eastleigh has turned out to be, right? A friend of mine, off the record, working with the KRA, said that at least they see hundreds of millions exchanging hands in Eastleigh every day. Right? Oh. So Eastleigh has risen so much, and then we know the culture and the nature and the ethnicity of the people. Somalis naturally are aggressive people, right? So with the official opening of the border, then how will it help the country and the common nature by extension?
Thank you very much. First, I want to go back and say in the last few months we saw, we could be thinking that this talk started yesterday, but last few months we saw the president actually going to Somalia, and I'm sure some of these talks and treaties were agreed upon then. There's something, this should have been something that is going on for a very long time, and actually they have considered the benefit that both countries are going to mutually enjoy. Yeah. If you look, and maybe as it has been said, you cannot be able to separate or to be able to compare or to be able to contrast a Kenyan Somali or a Somali Somali. You cannot be able to do that. Secondly, Somalia is actually one of the biggest countries in East Africa, or in Eastern Africa. Just the way, for example, we have traded with, say, Tanzania for the longest, is the same way we are going to operate in that. But now, looking at the Eastleigh scenario, we know most of the people in Kenya, in Nairobi, they normally go to look for trading opportunities from Eastleigh because goods are cheaper. And also the fact that for the last few years, there has been an organization or a reorganization in terms of how goods flow, and also there has been specialization. And we cannot say that there are no benefits that have mutually come from that, even from actually the Kenyan Somali. From an aggressive perspective, we know Kenyans are also more aggressive. Somali could be aggressive. We know also other communities are very aggressive. And we know there are a lot of opportunities that are going to come with both. Even from, say, for example, a farming perspective, we know there's a lot that is going to be going to Somali and all that. We know, I think the only commodity right now we know Kenyan export to Somali is maybe miraa. People talk about a lot of miraa, but right now we are going to see a lot of change in that, because if you look at the centers or the towns like Mandera or even Wajir, which are also very economically very aggressive economically, we are going to see a lot of growth in that. And also somewhere like Mandela, it has always been seen as such a tourist attraction, yet that hasn't happened. So if common mwananchi, because I know maybe Somalis have been coming from the upper side to downside, but we haven't seen that happening a lot, say from western.
The exodus.
Yeah, we haven't seen that happening going to the north. And once that is facilitated, then we are going to see a lot of aggression, and we are going to see even the maybe other Islis rising up in Lamu, or even say Wajir, or say even Mandela. If we can be able to economically be able to balance, and the government necessitate, even from a tax perspective, it's going to mean that Kenya is going to grow as a better regional leader in the region and in Africa at large. But more so, the issue of diplomacy and peace cannot be underestimated, because there is no way business and economy can be able to thrive with a lot of volatility. As much as Dr. is saying that has been a lot of volatility and a lot of volatility, if all those can be able to be handled and peace be seen, the only concept and I think there's something about peace. When peace is there and peace is seen and peace can be perceived, then every other person, whether it's a Somali or a Kenyan, other normal Kenyan, I think economies are going to grow. And I think Kenya, we have handled that very well in the last many years. When you look at the Somali, Ethiopia, and even South Sudan border, yeah, I think if you can be able to come with that diplomatic way of being able to handle some of these things, then economy can be able to grow, because a normal Kenyan is an aggressive Kenyan.
Let me just, Faisal, let me just give perspective with figures on what Ms. Kinyanjui has said.
Please.
When you asked me to come here, I asked my research assistant to give me some statistics. I asked, what was the volume of trade between Kenya and Somalia, the latest statistic that we have. And here it is. Kenya's export to Somalia in 2021 for the whole year was valued at $122 million. And the exports from Somalia to Kenya was $880,000 only for the entire year in 2021. That is the official.
Remember the midst of COVID.
Yeah, that is the official statistic. But the contraband, so that's the official, one that is that's legal. Yeah. The contraband, that's the $880,000 is about 100 million Kenya shillings. On daily basis, just sugar alone, 72 million worth of Kenya shillings, 72 million of sugar coming into the country on daily basis. Now you can see, so the government is losing tax on this. You are not able to know what kind of sugar is coming into the country. Is it expired? Is it good for the consumption of the people in this country? And this goes on whether the border is closed or not. It goes through those panya routes that I talked about. So
you might as well then.
Yeah, so why not just open it and then regulate so that KRA can collect taxes? The Kenya Bureau of Standards can go and check on the quality. Is it, is it poison that is being brought into the country? So that regulation, when it comes to business, is helpful. And I'm very happy that the Minister of Interior has actually done this. So beyond the border management, surveillance, intelligence collection, security, benefits that the country is going to get economically, and that's the subject matter, I guess, for us today, is massive. And I only gave you the figures for sugar.
For sugar only, I know there's oil there is rice, there is spaghetti, there's
pasta,
macaroni, there's pasta, and the likes.
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. Those are some of the things that easily go across the borders, basically.
That's right.
Charcoal.
Oh yeah. And this idea that Somalis are... Somalis are very good businessmen. This idea that they are coming and they are taking over, I'm happy Ms. Kinyanjui has spoken to this, that they are not taking over. This is a capitalist society. They are coming to compete. We have to be as good as Somalis. They are very dynamic. and so let us put down regulations. We are a nation of law and order. Let us put in place, and this is the work of the government, platforms, organizations, and ways in which that everybody has a playing field that they can play in order to compete, but not to single out one community and saying, oh, this is a community that is, one people should ask, why are they successful? They are successful because they are very dynamic, and they bring down the cost normally of goods, and they focus on volumes rather than scale. The economies of scale rather than selling stuff at very exorbitant price.
So the rising of one particular community in terms of business does not necessarily mean the fall of the other, right? So you can, the cake is too big for everyone to share, right?
And I think maybe just to add on top of that, I think it's high time also other Kenyans can move from other areas and also go to the north. So and I hope the government will allow that and give that comfort. Listen
to what Pauline Njoroge says. She tweeted on Monday, retweeting on the tweet by the Ministry of Defense, saying, some few years to come, we shall regret some decisions. In other unrelated news, let me wish Kikuyu traders good night. They need it.
I think what I need to maybe say about that tweet is that I know focus has been different and especially we can say, for example, previously the Kikuyus are the ones who used to be in the River Road and all those places. But what I can also say is that also a lot of things has changed, whether it's technologically, whether it's in the way of doing things, whether it's in business model, a lot of that has changed in the recent times. And if there is, because whether the previous or the old traders have been doing business in a certain way and succeeded, it doesn't necessarily mean that if they're going to continue doing that going forward. A lot has to change, a lot of dynamism. And the other thing also I have to touch about is when it comes to business, then business will grow and business will grow out of some of the value system that also have to be put in place, because it is out of the value system that then something can grow for a very long time. And I'll give you an example. For example, if you go to the Native American businesses, they are able to grow businesses 6, 7, 8 generations. So from a Kenyan context and from maybe an African context, are we able to do that? And how well are we able to do that? If then, because economic growth also is going to come out of the value system that we are putting down in place, and the aggression, the aggressiveness, the aggression that has to come from that, the working hard, is that being instilled also in future generation? And how are we showing them in terms of how to be aggressive? Because one of the things that is coming up in the last few years, even from an education perspective, is that people have been told to work and go to offices. It's not going to work in future. There has to be a level of entrepreneurship, and maybe the common Somali person, the common Kikuyu person is an entrepreneur, but in that kind of entrepreneurship, a lot has to be done in terms of working really hard. To
nurture it, right?
To nurture it and to grow it.
Thank you so much. I want you to hold it there, please, because you're going on a very extremely short break. You need to pay your bills, Bana. Doctor about taxes and the economy. How do you do that if you don't pay bills? So keep it right there on Horizon TV. We're going to be back in a moment.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation. Verse of the day.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
المال والبنون زينة الحياة الدنيا والباقيات الصالحات خير عند ربك ثوابا وخير أملا.
Uislamu ni dini yenye mpangilio ulio kamili na taratibu zake humpa fursa kila mja kuifahamu na kuelewa.
Muislamu yoyote lazima achukue jukumu la kuifahamu dini yake, kuanzia kwenye shahada, ashhadu, nakiri kwa moyo,
kisha usafi wa kimwili.
Hapo ndipo huanza safari ya kumwabudu Mola wake.
Usikose kujiunga nasi kila siku ya Jumamosi live kwenye kipindi Ufahamu Uislamu, ili ujifunze mengi usiyojua kutoka Horizon TV.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Thanks so much for keeping it live, Real Talk. My name is Faisal, Kassim, and I am so honored and delighted to have you joining me tonight as we are talking about the effects of the Kenya-Somalia border being reopened, particularly in those three places as we have mentioned earlier in our program. Now, one thing that we really need to understand, and Doc, karibu sana, and thanks so much for making time for us once again. The Kenya-Somalia maritime dispute is still an open case. It's still an ongoing case. As a matter of fact, on October the 12th, the ICJ ruled and gave a ruling that actually was favoring Somalia. The following day, the Kenyan government came out and strongly opposed that particular judgment. So it's still an open case that may take any direction whatsoever. Is it an appeal? Is it application for a review? But still, it's an open case. So this reopening of the Kenya-Somalia border and the recent diplomacy that we've seen between the two countries, I mean, the president visiting. Now, as we're speaking, we have a whole delegation of mayors from some of the islands in Somalia visiting the country on an exchange program. So basically, we've seen a lot of diplomacy. How is this likely to affect the ongoing maritime dispute?
Yeah, I thank you, Faisal, for asking this question. The Kenya-Somalia maritime dispute became a very deep challenge for relations between Kenya and Somalia at one point. And there are reasons as to why the case went where or how it went to the International Court of Justice at The Hague, and it was resolved by a court in The Hague. Normally, the first place to address these challenges are to do so bilaterally, Kenya and Somalia sitting down. I think that failed, and the second is to have such a case at the Africa Union. They have what is called Africa Union Border Dispute Mechanism. So the case bypassed that mechanism by the African Union and then went straight to the Hague, to the ICJ. And that was a pity because there are so many cases such as that Kenya-Somalia maritime dispute that have been ruled by ICJ. ICJ cannot enforce that ruling. All the time, these kind of cases either are sent back to the countries to be resolved bilaterally, or a joint commission is established so they prospect the hydrocarbons or whatever, the fish, the
minerals,
water. And there are so many cases such as that, like between Nigeria and Cameroon over the Bakassi Peninsula, which, by the way, ICJ ruled in favor of one of the countries, but the two countries went and resolved the issues bilaterally. In fact, Nigeria and Cameroon established a joint commission. So the gas and oil that is coming from the Bakassi Peninsula is actually owned by both countries. That could have been the way to actually approach the Kenya-Somali maritime dispute. But at that time, the leadership that was there in Mogadishu was very anti-Kenya. And that was the problem. And, also, I mean, we had some, clowns who were, in the country. I don't want to speak much about that. I'm not too sure how serious they were in trying to address this issue. And Somalia complained that Kenya was not serious, so he decided to go to ICJ. You know, in the Philippines, in the Pacific area, there's this sprightly islands where China has an issue with Vietnam, with Cambodia, with Thailand, with Philippines, with Malaysia, and that was taken to ICJ. ICJ ruled for Philippines, in favor of Philippines, but there is no way China is going to allow Philippines to actually access that area. And so it always has to be done bilaterally, and that was the first mistake. Moving forward, there is still an opportunity, now that these two countries are very friendly, and the fact that the borders are now open, just the act of opening the borders by Kenya is a huge diplomatic gesture to Somalia that, look here, we can actually work together. And we can resolve so many things bilaterally. And the maritime dispute is one of those. You know, failure to resolve the maritime dispute bilaterally, you'll find all manner of spoilers, armies from all over. You could even have a Russian warship there the next day, because they are there's a lot of riches there. Or Wagner mercenaries, you just start hearing them operating in Somalia, and not to the benefit of Somalia, and neither to the benefit of Kenya, but only to the benefit of those countries that have the firepower to control. You can see what's happening in Mali today with it's with the uranium and coal and iron there. You know, those countries are not benefiting. And so it's up to the Kenyan government and the Somalia government to try and resolve this issue bilaterally, diplomatically. Opening these borders and improving relations between Kenya and Somalia is a very good step in that direction.
What I'm getting from you is that there is a chance to solve this matter outside the corridors of justice. Absolutely. Through bilateral talks.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have some contacts. Have you made this suggestion? Have you called? Have you told those guys?
I don't have. No, but we've
done tweet about it.
We at the Horn Institute, we've done research on this, and we've made very clear recommendations on how these issues should be resolved. Beyond making a recommendation, you know, Faisal, you and I will just sit here and talk and also recommend.
We will tweet about it, and then you just create a whole digital media craze to push
there are ways to actually address and to actually deal with that issue. And I'm sure the administration of President William Ruto, I'm sure they are seized with this matter and are going to move in that direction in addressing this very thorny issue, which can actually cause war between nations if not handled properly.
Before I let you go, Dr. a citizenship issue. I mean, Muslims have been subjected to be like second-class citizens in this country, especially when wanting to acquire some of these documents, and in particular, Somalis, people, or rather children, as young as 6 months old, are subjected to vetting.
Yep.
With the opening of the border and likelihood of a free flow, is it going to further frustrate this process? Or what do you think? What do you think is the future of acquiring citizenship documents?
I don't think I don't think it's going to frustrate the process. It's a good gesture from the Kenyan government. It's just going the issue of citizenship and the kind of the processes one has to go through to get an ID card or a passport, the vetting. I mean, I'm sure that will continue. I mean, I went through vetting myself. I'm not sure I liked it, but I had to go through vetting. I remember I even missed a trip out of the country because I had to go through vetting. I even missed a scholarship when I was still young. I'm hoping that the government, the administration, is going to take a fresh look at this issue of vetting and find a way to ensure that it's giving ID cards, passports to citizens. There are people who come and pay for this, and in fact the right citizens don't actually end up getting the documents because they don't have money to pay. And I'm glad the President William Ruto has put the right people, very relevant people from the Somali community to actually, and now people are talking and throwing all manner of tweets here and there. You know, Somalis are in the security sector. But I happen to know some of them. I think these are professionals that have been appointed to these positions, and they are going to deliver based on what they've done in the past, the kind of output they've produced, judged by the work they've done in the past. I'm sure they're going to deliver, and they're going to deliver on security as well. And Somalis, of course, are Kenyans, and let them be given this opportunity to try and redress and address some of these challenges that are affecting the country.
Thank you so much. Asante sana, Dr. Ruth, Eastleigh comes number 3 as the largest business employer in terms of geographic in country. Number 1 is CBD by extension of the Upper Hill, number 2 is industrial area, and number 3 is Eastleigh. So the opening of the border, you say that by extension is going to affect the economy. The employment situation in the country is regarded as the highest at the moment, right? Given one, coming from the effect of COVID-19, secondly, coming from a very intensive political period, and now we are in the early stages of the new administration, and the economy is yet to settle. The dollar we see every day against the Kenyan shilling, the way it's getting a beating. So basically, for as far as employment and the general economy is concerned, what do you have? What's your contribution on that?
Oh, first, we know the youth budge right now is very huge, actually heading to 40% of the country population, and most of which are young people. And the problem is that I think one thing that we can be able to learn from Eastleigh is entrepreneurship. Most of those people are into entrepreneurship. And there has actually previously been a lot of focus, as you've said. The second is industrial area, where the Big Four agenda in the last 5 years was more people to get into manufacturing. But manufacturing, we all know, it's very specialized, and there has to be a learning curve, especially when these young people come out of school and they have to go through kind of learning before they get to be able to go to proper manufacturing. But they can start from somewhere, and entrepreneurship is one of the best. And the fact that it doesn't need to cost you a lot for you to be an entrepreneur. You can start from the lowest. Actually, we've seen many business people who start from very small scale kind of businesses, and they grow. We've seen people actually over the years. Sometimes you even look at the people who for example, somebody you've seen on the street selling something, a commodity, and over the year they have grown to a big shop. So I think one of the insistence that has to be there, and one of the learning, is entrepreneurship. And the opening of border actually is going to benefit business people more than any other institution. And if the government is going to benefit even further, is going to be this helping spurring of economic growth through the common mwananchi and through the young people, because the model, actually even the government model, has to change in terms of what it expects, and even the opportunity that it has to present to its people. So one of the learning is, one of the case study that anyone can learn from Eastleigh is change of model, entrepreneurship, depending on yourself, getting some ideas, dreams, and working on them from an individual perspective, from a youth perspective, from how we are bringing from even our school system. And that has to be, the government has to agree to ensure that that is done and is changed, the business model, not the business model, but the government model in terms of how things are done. The other thing, what I'll say is about even when it comes to appointment of people in different institutions. I know you are talking of security and the issue of Somali based kind of people being elected, but it doesn't even have to matter who has been appointed, but the competency in terms how you can be able to change an organization and help people that are below you. We've seen a few changes that have been done even in the cabinet in the last few days, but are those people competent to be able to bring change to common mwananchi, identify gap, escalate those gaps, and those gaps can be able to properly be implemented so that we can be able to see the spurring of economic growth. And I'll say one thing, we could have seen that some of those things that have happened in Eastleigh, sometimes they are not even properly or so much supported by the government, maybe. But right now, can it be a learning kind of a case that can be replicated to other areas, and people be given opportunities for entrepreneurship, any common. But we have to also stop these things that it has to come through shortcut, it has to come through you doing something, it has to do coming through a deal, it has to you winning a big tender, it has to got you to knowing somebody you know. It has to stop. It has to be people working hard and being competent enough and identifying areas in their market that they can be able to bring forward, and those areas can be supported. And that is how the growth of this nation is going to come going forward. When we say, for example, it's a collection of taxes, how rigid, for example, how much tax is collected from Italy? Just from the fact that maybe it's seen it's an area that is not accessible, or it cannot be. But what kind of structures can be put so that we ensure that we can be able to get enough to support these businessmen, and they can be able to pay tax the right way, so that we stop all this stereotyping, and we ensure that everyone, a Kenyan is a Kenyan anywhere, ever, whether they're in Turkana, they're in Mandela, or they're in whatever part. And also, we know we have, with the youth badge, you know, there's a lot of things that are coming out of that. There's a lot of alcoholism, drugs, you know. How can such cases now be able to teach us to be able to deal with some of the eminent issues, morality issues that we are encountering as a country? Because without handling those issues, then even economic growth is going to be slow, because a whole generation lies there.
Channel the energy the right direction, correct? Aban, can we have some of those tweets, tafadhali, playing on the screen? Let's start with Honorable Yusuf Hassan, the Member of Parliament for Kamukunji, who said the closure of Kenya-Somalia border stands out as one of the most detrimental and ill-advised decision made by any government. The decision, considering the fact that we share a long and porous border, exposes a fallacy that closure was anyway beneficial to our national security. Instead, resulted in the destruction of livelihoods, significant loss of tax revenues for the government, and criminalization of trade traffic across border with Somalia. It is truly shocking that it has taken 12 years to rectify this grave mistake. Next tweet, Aban. We have at Benjamin Malik 2 says, Somo Ibra Mohammed Media, it's a game changer for consumer goods like sugar and cooking oil. Sour. Who else? Says the opening of the border will have a great economical impact on our people in northeastern Kenya and the rest of the country at large. Who else do you have? Say Kithuri Kindiki, this goes a long way to strengthen our bilateral relations and improve trade between the two states. It's a good start. That is at S9 5. About the last tweet, maybe MP Yusuf Hassan at Asmali, ensuring strong ties between the nation will help both countries thrive. So basically, last one, Jumbo King says, as much as it looks appropriate to open borders, please listen to security leadership on what to do. Make those borders secure and operational. Don't spoil the good work that was done to bring normalcy along our borders from criminals. Thanks so much, Aban. Now, I mean, generally we've seen the country, the citizens have appreciated the opening of the border. So, in the interest of time, Dr. let's just have your parting shot, inshallah.
Faisal, the continental trade, the value of trade in Africa is between 2 and 3%, I think, of the global total, meaning that we trade very little with each other. And this is why the Africa Union came with what it calls the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is supposed now to spur and increase that number from 2-3% to over 10-15%. Opening borders is one of those recommendations and actions that governments in Africa are supposed to do, so that we can travel easily between countries. Just like in Europe, with one visa to one country, you can travel, to about 20-something countries, and that should be the case in Africa. So that Africa Continental Free Trade Area is something that we need to implement, and I guess this opening of the borders, and eventually I hope the visa will also be waived and will contribute a lot to the free trade agreement by the African
Opening
Union.
of the border, one step in the right direction.
Correct.
Thank you so much, Dr. for that. Ruth.
Yes, I'm going to say there is the forces of supply and demand and especially with even the opening of borders, they are going at some point to settle somewhere. And when they settle at equilibriums, everyone is going to benefit. And actually, we are going to see more actually happening in Kenya from an economic perspective. And my prayer is that the youth of this country are going to be empowered, and they are going to be able to become entrepreneurs. They are going to be aggressive enough to be able to grasp and get the opportunities that are coming with some of these opportunities, and enjoy also the kind of diplomacy that will be coming, the decisions that are being made by the leadership, and also the leadership is going to take care of the common mwananchi.
Wow. So we are optimistic, we are positive that this is the best decision this government took on this matter.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. Thanks so much, Daktari.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ruth Kinyanjui. Asante sana, brilliant. I wish I would have spoken more, but I'm going to be strangled by Salma and Abad here on my ear, telling me that our time is up in the studio, so it's time to wrap it up and say good night. Thank you so much to all of you for keeping it live, Real Talk, throughout the night. Asante sana, may God bless you. See you next week, same place, same time. My name is Faisal Kassim, and this has been the Live Real Talk.